Hello, welcome back. Yes, today it's all about rebuilding, remastering monsters, stat blocks for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And yeah, the Kraken. The Kraken. My gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about the Kraken. Um, in many different ways. I have put up a poll, so I'm hoping you'll find the poll interesting. I'm also going to suggest grab some food, some drink, get your ideas ready. I already have a preconceived idea of what I want to do, but I want to get into this fairly quickly. So once you're comfortable and you have your food and your drink and you're ready to sort of, if you've got your book out, get your book out and let's hoe into this and see what we can do with this today. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about how to fix or remaster or redesign or do something about the Kraken stat block for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. For some of you, you may be aware that when you run the Kraken, it's not quite the monster you're expecting if you've ever used it. If you haven't ever used it, you wouldn't know. But I have run the Kraken many times for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and I've always find that it's lacking in something, and that has frustrated me for years. In fact, so much so that out of all of the monsters I have mucked around with, tested and trialed after the beta test and the alpha play test, I never really had an opportunity to test the Kraken during the beta test or the alpha play test for D&D Next, which was what became Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And so I was never able to sort of like see where the problem might lie. And for years, for the last 10 years, I've used the Kraken many times, as written and modified and changed. And it's probably, out of all the monsters, the one that I struggle with the most for a very specific reason, which I will highlight in a second. So what I've done is I've put together a Google document with the changes that I would suggest that get made to make this truly a terrifying monster that it should be, because it never seems to play that way. And even with me modifying it, it never really did what I needed it to do, and I suspect that's the same for a lot of people. So I've been working really hard to sort of get into a position where I can show you exactly where I think the problem lies, and is there a way of fixing that? So I think what I will do is I'm going to spend a lot of time on the Google document, and rather than jumping back and forth to chat, I'm going to open up my phone and see if I can track it on my phone. I just will see how that works, because often when I go back from big print to little print on my phone, I struggle. So as I said, I have play tested this little sucker so many times, which is ridiculous, because if you look at the challenge rating for a Kraken, it's so high. When are you ever going to get an opportunity to test it out? So you wind up testing it, as I have, when people aren't necessarily the level they should be to face the Kraken. That's what you wind up doing, because there's no other option really. So yes, be prepared for what I can only describe as a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff here today. So this is what I have, and I've already built out some of the changes that I would do. I have seen other people try to rebuild the Kraken stat block for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. I believe that during Kraken Week, Chris from Trent Monk's Temple did it. And it was amusing because I was watching him as he was doing it and thinking, those are quite a lot of the changes I would have generally made myself. I tend to agree with a lot of the things he was doing. Not everything, because it's not like me and Chris are on this completely the same wavelength, and I've got my own way of doing things. So let me grab my phone and let me go through this, and let's look at the maths and the special abilities. Today, surprisingly, I'm going to make the monster more complicated, but also simpler. In other words, it's going to be a bit of a contradiction. We'll see how this goes. Anyway, let me grab my phone. So one of the things you'll notice is that the armor class on the Kraken is not very high. Now, it doesn't have a really high dexterity score, which is to be expected, right? This creature is a lumbering thing. It's not necessarily that quick. So it's dealing with a lot of natural armor. But is the armor class high enough to really deal with the players who are going to be facing it? This is one of those really weird situations where sometimes armor class does not keep up with the capacity of the players at your table, and that is a frustrating aspect to the game. I've never been very happy about that fact, but that's the reality. It happens. So how do we solve that problem? And is it? Yep, there it is. Okay, cool. All right. Hello, Cal-Rel, how are you? So I'm going to take, again, I'm going to be using the Dungeon Master's Guide. We can't use the Monster Manual as a guide for rebuilding anything because the Monster Manual is all over the place with its mathematics. So there's no point using that. Instead, I'll be using page 274 with some slight adjustments because the table on page 274, which is the monster stat block by challenge rating, is not completely perfect. Okay, I do not expect it to be able to do everything that I need it to do because some of the maths is not quite right. But first off, what challenge rating is this monster originally? If we look at it, it is a challenge rating 23. What that means is really your characters, when they face the Kraken, should be level 20 or higher. So in other words, you should be playing with epic boons, or you should have reached level 20. Now, I have not tested the Kraken at level 20. I've tested it at level 19, 18, 17, and further down. And I've always found that even those lower level characters can deal with a Kraken pretty easy. A Kraken will last about, depending on what happens, between 1 round and 2 rounds. You may be lucky and get into 3 rounds or 2.5 rounds, but that's really about it. So if I want to fix this, I have to really think hard about what's going on, because you're dealing with a level 20 character. That's really what level you should be. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So what does it say for a level 23 monster? It says here its armor class should be at least a 19, not an 18. And we have an armor class of 18. Now, going down by 1 point's not a big deal. But when you're dealing with high-level characters, their modifier when they're going to be hitting is usually like, marshals will probably have a +5, a +15 to hit with magic items, magic weapons, maxed out primary ability score, highest proficiency bonus you can get. They're probably looking at something like that. They're probably hitting with a 15 because there's so many ways of pushing up your ability to hit a target. Okay. Lots is Kraken as it happens, wizards and warp drives. So we have to start at 19 at least. So what does that mean with regard to rolling to hit for a marshal? That means a marshal character to hit this thing needs to roll probably about, because to get a bonus to your ranged attacks, which is probably all your melee attacks, there are so many ways where you can get a +1, but then you got your +3 for your magic weapon. Because at level 20, if you don't have like a pretty significant legendary magic item, what are you doing? What are you doing? Dungeon Master, what are you doing? Is it a low magic environment? Okay, I get it. But the likelihood is they're going to have them. So that means they only have to roll a 4. On a 20-sided dice, they have to roll a 4. So that's less than a 25% chance they will miss, I'm pretty sure. That means they've got a better than 75% chance they will hit this thing and hurt it. Because that's what happens when you get past armor class. So we can go +1 up, we can go +1 down. And they went +1 down. Bollocks to that. We're going up. We're going up by 1. We can get away with it. Will not change the challenge rating of the monster. Okay? It will not affect it. I'll make it clear now. You can shift the numbers on armor class by 1 point and it's fine. Now I know people are thinking, oh, we should be making the armor class a 25 or a 24, as Fred Huber has pointed out right now. No, make it a 24. The armor class on your Kraken is not what is going to be doing the work. The hit points on your monster is what's doing the work. If you've ever seen a level 20 character pumping out damage, whether it's a martial character or it's a spellcaster, 400 hit points isn't going to last long. Okay, because each character is probably pumping out close to 100 hit points worth of damage, possibly even higher with a critical, with paladins, and definitely rogues. So, like, oh, okay, all right, that changes things. So you can expect that after 4 or 5 players have gone, those 400 hit points pretty much, there's no more. They have been eliminated. Okay, there's easy ways of doing this. You can even do this, believe it or not, by pumping out something as pathetic as, I mean, it'll take a little bit longer, as a cantrip, as a spell. So, but anyway, so we're going to push that up. Now, what I've done here is I've left the average at 472. The average is the same. The actual mathematics behind the formula, I'm leaving that alone, but I'm including the maximum hit points. Now, I know Chris, he decided to make it a mythic monster so that when you get to, you know, 420 hit points, then you're going to wind up having to destroy about 2 pairs of 200 hit point tentacles. I'm not going to do that. Let's just pull it into one place, okay? That's what I want to do. It's essentially the same process, okay? You're just giving it more. 729 hit points at level 20 is not a big deal. And if the players are facing it before then, really, they shouldn't have been. But the hit points is a timer. That's all it is. So don't worry about that sort of thing. What do you got here? I'm throwing a couple of purple worms at my level 8 players this week. Need to revisit the purple worm skill challenge video. Yes, that's a good idea. Yes, absolutely. Go have a check out that purple worm. I will rebuild the purple worm as well, but not today. Okay, so we've got that. We've got our maths for that. I'm pretty happy with the adjustments there. So now swim speed and land speed, I don't think we need to mess with. And I know a lot of people want to mess with and change the ability scores and the ability modifiers, but I honestly think they are fine where they are. So instead of fiddling around and mucking with them, I'm not going to do that, because I think there is no value in doing so. I don't have a problem with the numbers that have been presented here. That's all fine. Now we're going to go down to saving throws. Now I haven't highlighted everything that I've done here. But if you look at the original saving throws for this monster, you'll notice a couple of different things. One, the proficiency bonus is a 7, because it's a challenge rating 23, and it should be a 7 for them. So it's higher than the proficiency bonus that our level 20 characters will have, and that is an absolute must. Okay, there's no point otherwise. So if we look at the saving throws, we get a strength saving throw, we get a dex saving throw, we get a con saving throw. All of them have proficiency added. We have an intelligence saving throw, and we have a wisdom saving throw, but we do not have a charisma saving throw. So the going thing for most spellcasters is the weakest point is charisma. So you cast a spell that requires a charisma saving throw to actually affect you go for the weakest point. And of course the lowest one is the dexterity at a +7, okay? And if you look at how charisma is going to wind up, being a +5. And it's one of its biggest numbers. And yet apparently it doesn't have a saving throw against charisma. The idea being is we're giving it a weakness. My suggestion to you is that we don't do that. Okay? I've put in charisma +5, but I'm actually going to change it. I'm going to make it proficient as well. Okay? That means the true weakness is in dexterity, and it will be a +7. Okay, even a +7 is not that high when you're dealing with level 20 characters. They'll find a way around it. But it really does mean that most of the time when you're trying to make a saving throw, when it's making a saving throw, it's going to probably succeed, as it should. So 7 and 5 is 12. We're making it proficient in this. Okay. Otherwise, spells and anything that requires a saving throw will simply own a creature that really should not be getting owned that easily. I love playing spellcasters, play wizards more than anything else, and I play characters more than I dungeon master. But I am also aware that you can't just let them go off and get crazy. Now, apparently, just as Chris from Trent Monk had mentioned, the skills for anything like a Kraken, they're non-existent. They don't have any. Apparently, it was unnecessary to give a Kraken skills because are they just unskilled monsters at the bottom of the sea? Well, maybe they are, but I don't think they are. So we're going to give them athletics because they are very strong. So I think that would make sense. I think they would be very athletic. If they're dealing with water, yeah. History, they've been around a long time. They'll probably remember a lot of stuff. How intimidating is it? Probably extremely intimidating. So we're going to include intimidation as well. And then we're also going to include perception because we want them to be able to perceive in their environment. You should not be able to sneak up on a Kraken very easily. Now, I think Chris had included insight, but I do not want insight because I don't think it's necessary in this case. So I'm including these skills as well. Okay. The next thing, when it comes to the type of damage immunities that it has, one of the things that makes no sense, as Chris had also pointed out, is that why does a creature that lives at the bottom of the sea where it's really cold not have cold immunity? Because it must be extremely cold down there. Why does it not have it? So we're including cold immunity. It's only one damage type. I know people look at these sorts of things and say, when you include damage types, you should be changing the challenge rating because that's what the Dungeon Master Guide does. That is your mistake. I'm sorry. That is a mistake. Okay? Damage immunities, there usually aren't that many. Okay? There really aren't that many. So when you have them, they have such an insignificant effect on the game. Because there's so many different damage types, the chances are that the players select that particular damage type to do damage to your monster is kind of rare. It's usually like an accident. And it's usually pretty obvious to the players which things they're going to be immune to. Oh, it's an Ifriti. It's going to be immune to fire damage. I won't use fire on it. Oh, it's a creature that does lightning damage. Well, guess what? I won't use lightning against it because it's probably immune to that. Would that make sense? It's down at the bottom of the sea. It's probably immune to cold damage because it's in a really cold environment. So don't worry about those sorts of things. The only time you need to concern yourself is bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Those are the times when you are immune to those sorts of damage. And you know, in this case, it's non-magical attacks that do bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So if you've got a magical weapon, you're going to get past this. And most level 20 characters that are doing this sort of damage are going to get past it. Piece of cake. They will already have a magic weapon. So you can be guaranteed that this really, all this does here is stop a low-level character without a magic item really doing very much to the Kraken. And if they are, it's time for them to die because they should have not faced them in the first place. So that's my first point that I wanted to make with the damage immunities. So yes, we have made a slight adjustment, but not a huge adjustment to them. I'm going to get to conditions, but I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. Yeah, expertise. I'm not going to go for expertise. I don't think it's necessary. The reality is, if you are rolling dice, if you're picking up a dice and you're rolling intimidation checks, okay, for your characters against the Kraken, why did you ask for a dice roll? It's like taking the role playing out of a tabletop role playing game and turning it into a dice rolling game. It's not a dice rolling game. That number there is just to satisfy those people who think that it is really a dice rolling game. I will only support people who want to use dice rolls for role playing when they should be allowing people to just talk, use dialogue for things like deception, persuasion, intimidation. Those things really, that's a dialogue. And if you're using a dice, that's your little last resort because you're dealing with a beginner or you think the game is a dice rolling game. It is a dice rolling game, but it's not completely a dice rolling game. Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to worry about expertise, but thank you for the point. I get it, but it's just there because I want it to be clear that you should not be able to scare this thing off. So they've got a little bit of a boost to that. Anyway, moving on. You can't frighten this thing. Okay, if you look at the original stat block, its condition immunities are frightened and paralyzed. We've added a couple more. Chris had suggested frightened, grappled, paralyzed, and restrained. And I agree with him pretty much, because what the heck can grapple the creature this size? And what can restrain it? So we're not going to be doing anything. It is simply too strong, too powerful to do that. But have we covered enough things? So if I grab the player's handbook and look at the conditions at the back, there'll be a bunch of conditions that we can sort of go through and decide, is there anything missing? Now, normally I would stop and you know, ask questions and chat, but I'm going to work really quick today, because I'm still reviewing a new book that's coming. And I need to go and do that, but I still need to do the hard labor with this as well. So let's keep looking. I don't want to put unconscious as an unconditioned, because that would be ridiculous. This just makes it impossible to deal with. Stunned. There are things that could potentially stun this creature. A monk could potentially wind up stunning a kraken. And for me, I'm not really happy with that idea. I do not want stun to shut down a monster, and it still could, because the way that stun works, even with revised rules, potentially means that it doesn't matter what size the creature is. You find that weak point. There is no weak point on a kraken, so I'm going to add stunned. I love playing monks, people, but I know that the stunned feature is way too good. Now, there's a very, very little chance that it will be successful. But I don't think there should be any chance that it's successful, because how the hell do you find the nerve point in a kraken? Stun. I'm adding stunned. Sorry. Restrained will stay. Prone. Prone, for me, doesn't make an awful lot of sense. How can you knock a creature that lives in the water prone unless it's on land? So I don't really, and it doesn't really have a center of mass. It's like a body with a head and a wiggly thing. So I'm going to add prone. I'm adding a few things, if you were wondering. So prone is going on as well. Prone. Okay, have I finished? Poisoned. No, I want you to be able to poison a creature like this. That's fine. Poison damage is pretty common. Petrified. No, we want to be able to petrify it, because if you remember in the Clash of the Titans, Medusa can petrify the Kraken. That's absolutely got to stay there. Paralyzed, we're getting rid of. Invisible, don't need to worry about. Incapacitated, we shouldn't be touching that. Grappled, frightened, deafened, deafening it, blinding it. Really won't matter too much, because I'm going to give it blind sight anyway. And true sight, not just one. So those are the conditions that I've added to this monster. Can I make it clear to people that I've never really felt like I got this right? Because if I was testing the Kraken and it's a level 23 challenge rating, and my players are less than level 20 and they're really stomping on it, I know I haven't gone far enough. So hopefully today is the day I go far enough. That's where my head is at. Anyway, so let's keep going. Expertise. Okay, let me go through and we'll do the next one. So I've done that. Let's move it up. Next, blind sight. Now, I had to think really hard about blind sight, and I think Chris is right, or maybe he's wrong. I don't want the ink cloud to affect the Kraken's ability to sense something. So giving it blind sight rather than dark vision was probably a smarter idea. Just having true sight, I mean, true sight is, I think, supposed to cover pretty much everything. And it had true sight to 120 feet. So I just need to check the rules on true sight to see if I needed to have the blind sight, because dark vision will be countered by its own ink cloud, and we don't want to have the ink cloud affecting it. That would be ridiculous. Also, too, the way that this creature senses things is really strange, so I'm not sure this is going to be the right way. Okay, so if I look at the monster manual, true sight says a monster with true sight can, out to a specific range, see in normal and magical darkness. Okay, so that's actually not, that should cover everything. See invisible creatures and objects, automatically detect visual illusions and succeed on saving throws against them, and perceive the ordinary original form of a shapeshifter or a creature that is transformed by magic. Furthermore, the monster can see into the ethereal plane within a range of the same range. So it kind of feels like True Sight is doing all the things it needs to. The question is, dark vision can be affected by blinding you. So if you are blinded, then you're affected by it. But if I take blind sight, I think that eliminates that rather weird problem. So while underwater, the Kraken expels an ink cloud of 60 feet. The cloud spreads around corners and areas and heavily obscured to creatures other than the Kraken. So in other words, heavily obscured each creature other than the... So this may or may not be required, but I'm including it just because I'm not completely sure of the interplay. I think True Sight was going far enough, but I don't understand the interplay that Chris was discussing between the difference between True Sight, Blind Sight, and dark vision. So I'm going to cover my bases and make sure that Blind Sight's also at 120 feet. Makes the stat block a little bit longer on that bit, but I mean it's not really making that much longer. I'm taking up blank space rather than leaving a larger blank space. So let's keep going. What do you have to say here? The ink cloud is a physical obscurement, so it needs blind sight. Okay, I was wondering about that. I was kind of wondering about that. That's why I put it in. So, okay, that would explain it. Now, I highlighted abyssal, celestial, infernal, primordial, and then it has telepathy up to 120 feet, but it can't speak. So I think essentially what that means is it's got a bunch of languages, but it can't speak. And is its telepathy only I mean, I guess, is it using telepathy for abyssal, celestial, infernal, and primordial, and it can't speak common? Is that what we're saying here? I'm not entirely sure. I'm assuming that it can speak abyssal, celestial, infernal, primordial, and then it has telepathy up to 120 feet, but can't speak confuses me a little bit, because that would mean that this creature cannot speak common, which I find bizarre. Now, if it doesn't use its mouth to talk, that's fine. And it's only using telepathy, but it can only... Yeah, so this part here confuses me a little bit. I don't understand what it's trying to achieve. And so I'm considering looking at some of the older books to see if maybe that will help me figure out what's going on here. But I'm going to leave it highlighted because that was something that stood out to me as there's something bizarre going on here. Okay, so you might know that when Chris did his rebuild, he decided there should be legendary resistances. I totally agree with him. I am not going to give them 3 legendary resistances per day. I'm not going to give them 5 or whatever. It's just once per round. That way you don't have to track it. That's really how many times you want your Kraken to be able to succeed on a failed save. I think that's good. I don't consider this a magical being. I'm not going to give it magic resistance. It was here and highlighted, but I've had plenty of time to think about it, and I don't think that it really needs it. Okay? Alright, so what have you said here? It can hear the things speaking at it, but it can't voice. Oh, I see. Okay, so it's communicating with telepathy. Okay, alright, let me just, I just want to process this a bit. Let's have a look at telepathy as an ability and see if we can lock that down. The amphibious section for the Kraken, there's no problem. We're going to leave that. I'm going to change freedom of movement and something else in a second. And I'm going to simplify it quite a lot for a couple of different reasons. But anyway, here we go. So first off, telepathy. Telepathy is a magical ability that allows a monster to communicate mentally with another creature within a specific range. The contacted creature does not need to share a language with the monster to communicate in this way with it, but it must be able to understand at least one language. A creature without telepathy can receive and respond to telepathic methods, but can't initiate or terminate a telepathic conversation. Okay. A telepathic monster doesn't need to see a contacted creature and can end the telepathic contact at any time. The contact is broken as soon as the two creatures are no longer within range of each other, or if the telepathic monster contacts a different creature within range. A telepathic monster can initiate or terminate the telepathic conversation without using an action, but while the monster is incapacitated, it can't initiate telepathic. Well, that makes sense. Okay, so what are we looking at here ultimately? Doesn't need to have a shared language. Well, the monster... Okay, so really it's two-way communication. It says it can't speak, but it's got these languages here. Okay, so first I think almost immediately what pops into my mind is that, one, I'm going to get rid of the magic resistance thing. That doesn't need to be there. I mean, it's a very powerful creature, but I'm not going to say it's a magical being as such. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in common. I don't understand why it would not understand common. Well, let's make it difficult to communicate with the Kraken. We have to fight it now. And then telepathy up to 120 feet. And can't speak. I'm ditching that. That's just confusing. So screw it. I'm moving that out. So that's what I'm doing. It's got these languages it can speak, and it also has telepathy up to 120 feet. Done. I think that makes it a lot easier to manage, rather than trying to confuse me. I don't want you to I don't want to be confused. I'm sure you don't either. So that's what I'm going to do. What do you got here, Fred? Yeah. So I think that's a simpler way of dealing with the whole thing. It's been around a long time. If it doesn't understand common, but it's got all these other languages, I don't... bollocks. It sounds ridiculous to me. Okay, first of all, Siege Monster. Siege Monster stays. As is, don't need to change it. Now, Chris had suggested Colossal, and I have no problem with the concept of Colossal, but I also have problems with freedom of movement. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to fold the two of them together because I feel like they cover a very similar thing. I'm going to make it a lot easier to figure out. So Colossal movement. That's what we're putting in there. We're changing freedom of movement to colossal movement. Okay, and then once I've done that, did I do well, have I got a capital here? Is it supposed to be a capital? I can't remember. Okay. All right. The Kraken ignores difficult the Kraken ignores difficult ignores magical or non-magical difficult terrain while in water. While in water. Okay? I think that is the only time, and all of this other stuff, forget about it. I think that's unnecessary. Let's just ditch that. We don't need that at all. Okay? And then this colossal concept, I'm taking this. We're going to take this sentence, cut it, and then we're going to go up here and paste, because of the Kraken's immense size, it cannot be moved against its will. End of story. There will be no spells or special abilities that can move a sodding Kraken around the battlefield. You are not going to be doing that. Okay? It is way too big. So forget it. Find a different route to success. So I'm doing that. Now this cleans up all of that freedom of movement nonsense. It fills in some gaps so you don't have people casting spells at it that makes it fly in the air and levitate or reverse gravity on it. Or I need one of these guys. Just give me a sec. So that's, I think, the easiest way to tidy and clean up that aspect of the Kraken. Okay, next. Our big problem after that is how do we deal with things like damage output and to hit modifiers? And this is where I always get really frustrated, because we deal with multi-attack and we deal with bites and tentacles. If you look at how the fling, bite, tentacles all work for this monster, it's so cumbersome and so complicated, and frankly a complete pain in the ass, and I hate it. I really despise it. So we need to be able to clean up a lot of this. That is where most of my time is going to probably wind up being very shortly. But first of all, I want to deal with this ability here. It is, if you notice, it is also supposed to be available for 20 action point, 2 action points, 2 legendary action points. I don't want that. When I think about the Kraken, this is one of the biggest issues I have. Why does this thing create a lightning storm? It's a Kraken. In what part of the lore have they ever done this? And I've never seen it anywhere other than in Dungeons and Dragons. And in the 5e Monster Manual seems to bring it out a lot. I am all right with making our Kraken electrical and giving off an electric shock. And I would much prefer to call it electric shock than lightning storm. Because what if there's no storm, as Chris had pointed out? And what the hell does that got to do? Now, I can see it being, okay, it's a combination of the electric eel and a squid and an octopus and a unique monster. But I'm going to call it this. And I want to put it on a recharge as well. I don't want it to necessarily be able to be used every single time. But I'm also a little concerned about not being able to use it as well. Is it going to wind up being the only go-to? So I'm going to think about this a little bit more. But so we're going to go with electric shock, and we're going to hit it with a, I think it's a recharge. I'm going to make it 4 to 6. I think it is. I'm just going to remember how do you line up a recharge? Creatures that have rechargeable abilities, like the dragons, have all rechargeable abilities, don't they? So how do I want to structure this? Recharge, recharge, recharge. Breath weapons, recharge, and they got a 5 to 6. We could probably, and that's an ancient dragon. So recharge. For now, let's make it 5 to 6. And then the damage output we'll have to fix in a second, because it's supposed to be doing a truckload of damage, and it does piss all right now. Anyway. So recharge on that. We've got that little bit. And then the Kraken magically creates 3 bolts of lightning, each of which can strike a target the Kraken can see within 120 feet of it. That's fine. A target must make a DC 23. Now, DC 23 is pretty hard. Is that out of alignment with the challenge rating? Let's have a look. Challenge rating is 23, and it says DC should be 20. This is quite a lot higher. It's quite a lot higher. Now, let's think about how high that damage, how high that DC is. What is likely to be the best thing that a player can have in terms of a saving throw when they make that saving throw? Dexterity saving throw. Imagine they have a +5 to their dexterity as a modifier. So that's 5. And then they add their 6 for their proficiency bonus, that's 11. And then they add 8 because you add 8 to a saving throw thingy. So that means their DC is roughly, what, 19? So I would say 20 is probably fine. Now, there are lots of ways that like a paladin can make it better, but I generally feel that it's fine to have a DC go down in this case. DC 20, we can push it up to a DC 21, and I would be fine with that too, and making it a little bit harder. Okay, because sometimes players have things that give them better saving throws. So yeah, 5 and 6 is 11, plus an 8, 19. So going up to 20, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go 20. It could go even to 21, I suppose, but I think 20 is fine. Leave it there. Next, if we have a look at the damage output, our damage output for this thing is way too low, because the amount of damage that this ability needs to be able to do. Yeah, this is where the problem lies. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to start talking about that. Yeah, unless to polymorph it to something like goldfish first. Yeah, the number of krakens that have been transformed into goldfish or worms in my games are many. It happens a lot. Hence why you've got to make sure you have legendary resistance and you have better saving throws. Otherwise, it's kind of a bit silly. So first off, if we bring up a calculator and have a look at how much damage we need to do with our single turn, when it's our turn to make our turn, how much damage does the guide say we should be making? So in a round, on its turn, it should be making between 177 and 194 points of damage. That is a lot. So even if we split that number into 3 pieces, because we're striking 3 targets, that's fine, because we can. So we take that number, 194, and we have to divide it by 3 for this ability. I need to be doing, with every lightning strike, 64 points of damage, roughly. I can do a little bit less than that, but that's where I need to be hitting. That's a lot, isn't it? That means even if I were to go with, something like 4d10 and go to 8d10 as Fred Huber suggested, it's still not enough, because all that would do is double it to 44. And that's not nearly enough. I don't want you as a game master rolling dice ever, really. So is there a better way of doing this? Because I have to hit a target of 64 points of damage, or slightly under that, because of the range. Okay, so given that, we've got to do something fairly significant with this little bugger. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So let's have a look at how that might pan out. So I'm going to take our 8, and then I divide it by 2, get 4, and then if I multiply it by 10, I get that. So I think roughly, yeah, okay, all right. Hopefully I get this right. My brain is a little bit fried today, but so we need to do significantly more damage, and I need to pump it out. Let's go with a 12. A 12 is it 6.5? So a DC 12. How many do I need to get it done? I need 6.5. And if I multiply that by, say, let's say 8, would give me 52. Is 52 close enough? Is that correct? A D12. I'm using a D12. Yes. So Fred Huber's suggesting I go with 12 D10, but it's better just to roll bigger dice if you ask me. Not that you should be rolling that many big dice anyway. You should just use the average. I think we could go with a 9, and that would solve the problem. 6.5 multiplied by 9 gives me that. Or maybe no. Maybe it's 10. Maybe it's 10. 6.5 multiplied by 10. Close enough. I think it's close enough. Make it 10. Because the chances are they're going to save it anyway and take half damage. My guess being that's probably what's going to happen. So 65. So lightning damage on a failed save and half as much damage on a successful one. Done. Now our feature that we can use on a recharge is a little bit better. It's probably going to be a lot scarier for level 20 characters. And if you're not level 20, you shouldn't have been facing it in the first place. That's what I would say. Okay. So going down here, I want to look at legendary actions. I'll go back to the standard actions in a second. And let's have a look at some of the things that are going on here. Like all legendary monsters, I always think that having one legendary action at the end of every player's turn is the best way to go, because it adjusts for the size of your party. If you have 10 people in your party, there's going to be 10 legendary actions. If they have 5, there's 5. If there's 4, there's 4. If you have only 3, then you have 3 legendary actions. So it's a nice adjustment for party size. And frankly, I've always found that to be far more interesting for the players and the game master, even if the players prefer the idea of only having 3 legendary actions when they have a big party so that they can stomp it. I'm not here to help them stomp it. I'm here to make it interesting. Now, it's basic attack. We're going to keep the bite, the fling, and the tentacle attack. Okay? Those are always going to be options as a legendary action. The next thing is the lightning storm thing comes up, which is now electrical shock. I don't really want it using, if you had a choice between using the bite, fling, or tentacle attack, you would never use them if you have the lightning storm or electric shock. Even if this 2 action thing, I don't want to do that. I actually want to ditch it from the legendary actions. I think the lightning storm or electric shock as a legendary action is a stupid idea. It is better to have it come up more often and make the recharge easier, or even give it once per round if you really wanted to, than to have it as part of legendary actions. Lightning is legendary, 1 action, 1 target. No, I don't want to do, see, this is the thing, I don't want to do 177 or 194 points of damage to 1 target with a lightning bolt from this creature. Spreading it out amongst 3 characters is a good idea. So I know it had lightning storm is costing 2 actions. I'm going to remove it. And then we're going to make our recharge. I think we'll adjust it. I already said that I was going to adjust it to 4 to 6. It might well wind up being once per round. Electrical shock is what it leads off with. And then it uses its fling, tentacle, and its bite. Now the ink cloud. Let's have a look at the ink cloud. So first off, it's got a really high DC. I don't think it needs to have that DC as high as that. We go down to a 20. Okay, same reasons I explained before. I'll go through legendary actions very quickly. So it's got a bunch of stuff in here that are, like, I think unreasonable. I'm not terribly worried about the likes of legendary actions and lair actions. Or should I say, lair actions aren't really, as far as I'm concerned, a huge deal. Do you know what I mean? They're all right. They're there. They do things, but that's just part of the lair as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to move this DC and make it smaller. So it's going to be a bit easier to save against. All of its regional effects, I'm not going to mess with. I think they're fine. And in terms of damage output for a lair, you know, this thing here, I couldn't care less about it doing 10 points of damage. It's kind of pointless against level 20 characters, high level characters. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. But that's what I'm going to do with that. And then we're going to come back to our ink cloud, and I need to fix the ink cloud before I go and deal with the other stuff. Now it says costs 3 actions. Bollocks. Bollocks to you. Once per round. You get to do it once as a legendary action. You decide when, but you're going to get to do it once. That's it during the round. Even though you got lots of legendary actions, we're relying on the bite, the tentacle, and the fling. Okay? That's those, and of course we've got all the standard actions available there as well. But that's what I think that should be. Keep it simple. Now, while we're here, let's look at our damage output. Are we really doing what we need to do to a character? While underwater, the Kraken expels an ink cloud in a 60-foot radius. The cloud spreads around corners, and that area is heavily obscured to creatures other than the Kraken. Right, so here in the actual thing, it actually states that the Kraken cannot be obscured by its own ink cloud. So we really didn't need to worry too much about the blind sight. But there are other things that can create heavy obscurity that that would be able to have affected it. And so that can be rough if suddenly somebody else creates heavy obscurity and it's not darkness, and then suddenly our Kraken can't do anything, can't see where to attack. Each creature other than the Kraken that ends its turn there must succeed on a DC 20 Constitution saving throw. Again, it's not going to be hard for the players to deal with that at that high level. Taking 16 3d6 poison damage on a failed save. Bollocks. Or half as much damage on a successful one. A strong current dispels the cloud, which otherwise disappears at the end of the Kraken's next turn. So, it's really only lasting a very short space of time. And if you end your turn, so at the beginning of your turn, if you get out of the cloud area, then you're all right. But if you don't, you're going to be affected. The damage output is really horrendously low. It's really bad. One bolt at D10 at 10d12, not tripled. I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean there, Fred Huber. But I'm pretty sure 64. I'm pretty sure that's right. I'm sure my numbers are right on that one. Did I not? Did I add that up wrong? Where's a dragon? I'm sure I got the maths right on that. It's possible I screwed it up because I am still sick. So here we go. So well, 12d10 is 66. Oh, maybe I have screwed it up. Oh no, that's a d10. I'm using a d12, not a d10. That's an adult. It's a Dracolich. Here we go. Why bother? If you're doing so much damage, why friggin' use an 8-sided dice? It's ridiculous. Let's have a look here. Acid breath. 8. I'm pretty sure that's right. What is the average of 10d12? I'm pretty sure it's 65. Let me know if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's right. Okay, let's have a look here. So we need to increase the damage output of our ink cloud. How many can be affected with this, the size of the area? It's 60 feet. We're probably going to get everybody. 4 or 5 characters. So what I want to do is I want to spread it around. Let's assume that we're dealing with 4 characters as a reasonable target area. You know, the traditional, you have 4 characters. So we need to spread it around 4 characters. So we'll take our 23 challenge rating, and our damage output maximum is sort of 194. And if I get rid of this, 190, we can go from 177 to 194. So 177, 94. What are you saying here? You added right. I meant keep lightning legendary as a single bolt, but not a amplified bolt. Yeah, I don't think it should be in the legendary. I think it should be a thing that it can just do during the rounds. I don't want to keep it as a legendary feature. I want it to do, you know, well, I suppose it could go over here. I suppose it could go over here and be shifted out of the section here. Let me think about it a bit more. I still want Ink Cloud to be once around, and I still want Electric Shock. Well, once around. Once around. Let's think about this a little bit more. Let's just make it once around. It really should be the thing you're leading off with anyway, isn't it? Once per round. There we go. I'm happy with that. Okay, let's have a look. Now, hopefully, if I've done my maths right, and there's no guarantee that I have, I'm just thinking I'm just thinking if maybe I've over punched on the electric shock. It's a 12-sided dice. That's 6.5. And if I multiply that by 8, it gives me 52. Then if I multiply that by 3, it gives me, yeah, I'm not really happy about that. It's still too low. But if I am doing, so 6.5 multiplied by 9, it's 58. Okay, it's not bad. Multiply that by 3. It's still, yes, well, yeah, it's still a little bit underwhelming. This is so close to where it needed to be anyway. I think that's fine. Okay, right. Let's deal with the other number crunching that I was having to do, which is the Ink Cloud. Ink Cloud maximum top. Let's aim for the top. 194 is how much we should be doing roughly for a challenge rating 23, and then we're hitting 4 targets. So divide that by 4. So I need to be doing 48 or slightly less than that in terms of damage with every target, which is a lot. So 48 points of damage. What's an easy way to get that done? I think we use 12-sided dice again, frankly. And I want to get to 48 so we can get all 4 characters. If there's 5 characters, then it's gonna, yeah, it's adjusting for level at that point, isn't it really? But we just assume the whole party's going to be caught in it. So we're going to make this a little less powerful in terms of the damage output. And we probably should also poison damage. And I think the poison condition should be there as well. Let me think. Let's go 12, 6.5. And if I do that with, is it 6 dice? Multiplied by 6 equals, that's too low. So 6 dice is not enough. So 6.5, multiply that by 8 dice is too much. So now I've got to trim it down. Okay. So now we're looking at 6.5 multiplied by 7 dice. So 45. I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty close to where we needed to be. So I think 12-sided dice, 7 of them. It's an odd number, but it's roughly where we need to be. So we'll go there. 12. Our average output of damage is 45. We're dealing with 4 targets, so that should be close enough to where we need it to be. So 45 multiplied by 4 gives us 180, which we're in the band range. That's where I needed to be. So we're between 177 and 194. That's good. All right. So I think that's now doing the kind of damage it needed to do, which is wonderful. I'm happy about that. What do you got here, Fred? I'm evil. Make the ink persistent longer and damage. Easy to get out of before. So each creature other than the Kraken that ends and that ends its turn, that starts its turn, there must succeed on a DC 20 Constitution saving throw or take 45 average poison damage on a failed save, and have the poisoned condition on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. There we go. I think that's more a strong current. Yes, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's roughly where it needed to be. Okay, so now how am I doing for time? I'm now an hour into this, and we've done that. We've done this, and I'm leaving this as a major feature on its action. I guess the reality is that the electric shock might be more useful to be able to place in the legendary action section. Why would that be? Because you can then position it and time it the way you want to time it. Yeah. I think is that what you were trying to indicate? I think that's what you were trying to indicate, eh? Enter or starts. Oh, you're saying enter or starts. Okay, so each creature other than the Kraken that starts that enters or starts its turn there must succeed. Okay, all right, that's okay. Got that. So I think what we will do is we'll take your suggestion. I think that's what you were trying to communicate to me, that it's probably going to be more versatile for a Dungeon Master to have it as part of the legendary actions rather than tied to specifically its turn. Cut. Because now I can shift it around a little bit, can't I? And I don't want you to be able to do it multiple times. I just want it to be there. So it's now setting, there's 2 legendary actions that you have once per turn: Ink Cloud, Electric Shock. Then we're going to use the Bite, Fling, and the Tentacle. Now I need to tidy up the Bite, Fling, because they are painful to look at right now. They're really not great. So if we have a look at the attack bonus that we're expected, so almost immediately, if you're having a look at this, there are DCs in here, and it annoys me when I see DCs like this. So I'm just going to change them now. 25 is 20. 20, not 22. 20. DC. Escape. No, it's not going to be that low. That's way too low. Making it a 20. Okay, it should be 20. So we're making it a 20. Moving on. Another 18 here. Screw that. It's a 20. High level characters can deal with this. They'll be fine. Okay. Next. Let's deal with the attacks. All of these attacks have things that they can do, and we've got a plus 17. A challenge rating 23 creature is supposed to have an attack bonus of 11. 11. So what is the expected challenge rating of a level 20 character? Is it 11? Okay. If you're a spellcaster, you probably got 5 from your ability score modifier. Okay. So that's 5. And then you got your proficiency bonus at level 20, which is a 6. So you've probably got an 11. Plus 11 when you're casting spells. And this thing has got a plus 17, which is really, really high. It's probably been adjusted for expected armor classes. That would be my understanding of what's going on here. But the first thing I would say to you is this creature can grab literally everything under the sun. It's got 30-foot reach. It's got a lot of reach going on here with its tentacles. So here's what I would suggest to you. Is that we don't need to worry about the attack bonus quite so much, because with the reach we can go and grab the back line and play with them and throw them around all we like. And crush them and whatever else. And eat them. So no problems with that. So what is the expected to hit? I think Chris said it was 15. And I think I've calculated level 20. You probably got a 5 maxed out your ability score modifier for your attack. Probably strength or dex. And then you got your proficiency bonus, which gives you an 11. But then, of course, you can increase that by +1 with almost all martial classes. Or you can get yourself advantage, which basically is another +5. So you're really looking at a 16 or a 15 roughly in there. And then usually at level 20, you're probably going to have a magic item that has a bonus to it. So I would say to you that 11's probably too low. And I think 17 is getting a little bit carried away. So what we're going to do is we're going to tone it down a little bit. We want to match it up with our characters as much as possible. And we're going to make it a 15. Okay? That means we've got a 25% chance. We're probably, roughly around 25% chance we're going to get the back line. The wizard's probably going to get done. Even with mage armor and shield, it's probably going to get done with a tentacle. Okay? It's got a pretty good chance of being successful. So that's, maybe a little bit less than 75% of the time it's going to get hold of the spellcasters in the back row. Front row may be a little bit more difficult because they could get up to a 25 or a 30. So that's a 50% chance, or maybe better in terms of grabbing them, depending on what they have. Our damage output for our tentacle is bloody awful. I have no problems with the +10 for the strength thing. That's all good, but the dice we're using for our tentacle is awful. So melee weapon thing, and it says here, reach 30 feet, 1 target, and then we do this damage, and it's bludgeoning damage, and the target is grappled, escape, DC 20, until the grapple ends, the target is restrained. Good, wonderful. The Kraken has 10 tentacles, each of which can grapple 1 target. So we can grab the whole party if we need to. So that's good. Wonderful. That's all sorted out. Yes, I suppose you could. So I feel like the tentacle attack is just the damage output that we're worrying about. Now with multi-attack, we can make 3 attacks. The Kraken makes 3 attacks. 3 attacks. Either with a tentacle makes 3 attacks either with a tentacle or fling attack. Okay. One of the 3 attacks can be a bite attack. So here's how my thoughts are in terms of multi-attack. You let me know if I've got it wrong, but I'm pretty sure this works. This means that if I want to use a bite attack, I can once with the multi-attack. But if I don't want to use the bite attack, I don't have to. I could make 3 tentacle attacks, or I could make 3 fling attacks, or I could make 1 tentacle attack and 3 fling attacks, or 2 tentacle attacks and 1 fling attack. So I can shift. I've got a bit more versatility, in other words. I think that's what our multi-attack really wants to be able to do. So that's how I'm going to structure it. You think 5 attacks No, I think 3 attacks is fine. Look, I suppose you might be saying the more attacks we make, okay, the more thing. But I don't want to roll more than 3 fucking attack dice as a dungeon master. It's a pain in the ass. Okay. You want 4 tentacles and a bite. The problem is we're using more legendary actions to do more stuff. I don't want the dungeon master's turn to take forever to do. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't want players to take forever to take their turn either. But 3 attacks is 3 dice. And most dungeon masters will have at least 3 dice on them. And so you just do that and you do your average damage. I think 3 attacks is fine. I don't think it needs to be 4 or 5 attacks. I think we leave that alone. Okay? That means there will always be, hopefully, somebody at the beginning of the round who is not entangled by this damn thing. Because we need to have somebody to be able to get the rest of them out of the pickle. So I think 3 attacks is fine. I know Fred Huber's very eager for 5 and he's given us his suggestion. I'm going to leave it for now. I always find when multi-attack includes more than 3 attacks, it's really a drain on time. So next, we need to deal with the damage output for our tentacle. My concerns with the tentacle attack and the bite attack and the fling attack, if we're using them sort of interchangeably with multi-attack, that you can basically use 1 bite attack or just use tentacle attacks or just use fling attacks, part of your multi-attack, that one of those things will wind up being more useful than another. So I want to flatten out the damage output for all of them. You're evil. Well, this is pretty ruthless too. I think this is going to be significantly more difficult than it was before. So we need to pump up the damage output on this thing. So you remember before when I was looking at how do we actually deal with the damage output, we go back to our, now it says here damage around. We're dealing with a legendary monster, and you've got to think about when you only have 1 monster doing something, you've got to treat it as having to do more things. Like the legendary monster is essentially multiple monsters in the body of 1 monster, so it's got to be able to do more. So we've got to think more in line with that. So what we want to do, so I think the best thing that we can aim for is, again, go with 194, divide this by 3, and that gets, oh no, that didn't work. What do I do? 194 divided by 3 gives me 65. So that's sort of my target. Did I get it wrong again? Oh, 194 divided by 3, brain shutting down. Here we go. There's 64. So that's how much damage roughly. I want to be around there. Okay, if I can hit that target, that's probably where I need to be. So how do I do that? I don't want to roll 6-sided dice. It takes forever. Okay, to get to that point, it will take me forever. Now, I am also aware that it's probably the most common thing you're going to do, and I know some dungeon masters like to roll dice. So I'm going to increase the number of 6-sided dice just because I know you'll have more of them than other things. Please, if you're playing at level 20, you know, whether you're a player or a dungeon master, stop rolling damage dice. I don't know why you do it. It is madness. Utter madness. Anyway, so this is 3.5, and we need to get, and we're going to have 10 of them multiplied by 10. Gets me 10 equals 35 plus 10. 45. It's nowhere near where we need to be. It's nowhere near. We need to change to a different dice. It's not going to work. Can I go with an 8-sided dice? Let's go with an 8-sided dice. And we go 8. Now, is it 8.5? I think it is. 8.5 multiplied by 10 equals that. It's 45. Still not going to be high enough. So, again, let's move the number of damage dice to 10. And we need to go, where are we? 10 is 5.5, isn't it? 5.5 multiplied by 10 equals this, 55. Add that, and we'll write it. We're kind of right on the money. We're pretty close to where we needed to be. Plus 10, 65. To give you an idea, people, when I do this with my own home group, usually I take the average damage that I've calculated that it needs to do, and I roll a 6-sided dice and add one 6-sided dice to the average damage. With my power gamers, they still do fine. So even if you see, oh, 65 is really quite at the top end of things, Fred, are you really sure about that? Yeah, if you're dealing with experienced people at high level, they'll be fine. They'll be all right. There might be some damaged bodies, but death is like just a door. It's just a temporary thing at high level. Level 20, most characters can come back pretty easily. So I think that's the damage output we need to do for the tentacle. So that means that our tentacle will actually be sitting more in line with where we needed it to be. If we do the tentacles, we get 195 points of damage in that round. If we hit, that is. That's if we hit. We might not hit. Okay, so we've figured that one out. Next, let's do the fling. One large or small object held or creature grappled by the Kraken is thrown up to 60 feet in any direction it wants, and knocked prone. That's fine. So we're knocked prone. In water, it's probably going to mean very little. I wouldn't worry about it. What is this? 10 or more dice almost always is near the top of bell curve average. Okay, good to know. Another way to do it is 4d6 times x. Good to know. I think we're all good. I think that's going to be fine. Next, I was getting distracted. If a thrown target strikes a solid surface, the target takes damage. Bollocks. I don't like that. I really, really hate this. For every 10 feet it was thrown. I don't understand why we do this. If the target is thrown at another creature, the creature must succeed on a DC. So, this just complicates things. I know it's look, the intention is to make it easier for you to adjudicate, but I don't think it does. If the target is thrown at another creature, that creature must succeed on a DC 20 dexterity saving throw or take the same damage and be knocked prone. Okay. That's fine. Why is it taking the same damage if you throw it at another creature, but if you get thrown at a, like a hard surface, you're literally like, oh gosh, oh, what's happening here? You've done what? What have you done? You've it makes, I don't know why they do this. I don't know why they do this. This line would work if this damage output was better, but it's not. So I think what really needs to happen here is we need to tickle this a little bit. I'm more of the opinion that probably 10d12 is where I need to hit with regard to this. If I remember right, 10d12 is 65 points of damage. That's the electrical shock thing. Okay? We want our fling to be able to, it's throwing it at enough force that it's not the distance that it travels that matters, it's just hitting something. You got to fling it at the ship, at a rock, or whatever it is. So let's go 10d12. And that will be 65 points of damage. For a level 20 character, it's all good. That's fine. If a thrown target hits a solid surface, the target takes 65 bludgeoning damage. Get rid of this. You don't need that. Okay? So now we have flattened it out a little bit. So we're roughly doing the same amount of damage, just in a different way. If the target is thrown at another creature, that creature must succeed on a DC 20 dexterity saving throw or take the same damage and be knocked prone. So, if you miss, you do no damage to another creature. If you hit them, you do the same amount of damage and they're knocked prone. But we also need to make sure that when you throw these characters around at another creature, that they're also going to take some damage. If a thrown target strikes a solid surface or another creature, the target takes. So now we can throw it at another creature or a solid surface and it will do roughly the same amount of damage. Now I agree, yes, a hard wooden ship or a rock probably going to be harder and do more damage than throwing you at another creature. But the creature you're going to throw it at is probably covered in armor. They're pretty hard as well. So let's not worry about that. I think that's just a thing we get around. Okay. A warship has 500 hit points. Yes, and we want the warship to get smacked around quite a bit. So yeah, that was... Hello, Big Kid. Big Kid is a patron and a moderator. Fred Huber is a patron as well. So about 9 PCs tossed against the ships, and the ship sinks, as it should. Level 20 characters have walk on water and water breathing. Like so for example, your if you got 9 PCs, what level are your PCs, Big Kid? Because my characters have had walk on water and water breathing for a while. You know, those spells in the back you can access very, very quickly, and they affect 10 characters, 10 creatures. So water, so this is why I'm doing it this way. Water walking is only a level 3 spell. You can get it at level 5, I think, isn't it? And then water breathing, a level 3 spell. So at level 5, they have all of the spells that would allow them to deal with the fact that their ship sunk. Besides, in your case, Big Kid, this is why they should have taken on the castle built on the giant turtle that swims around that you've got. That's a far better, smarter thing to have. That might actually deal with it. The level 10, my characters are level 11. We're all level 11. I've got water breathing and I've got water walking. So we don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. If we get into a fight, we're going to have those spells going up first. If we don't already have them, because they last so long. They last forever. So this is all good. I think this is fine. Next, the bite attack. I don't like the bite attack. I want to trim the bite attack down a little bit. I don't want the bite attack to be a 17. I want it to be a 15. And then this is how it's going to work. Its reach 5 feet. Its mouth isn't going to go very far. One target, and it does way too little damage. Pardon me. So we're changing our numbers here again. 10 and 10. So that means we come out at a 65. So I've flattened all of the damage output. Neither attack is really that much better than another. Really, the only benefit in the bite attack is that they are now restrained and going to do acid damage on later turns. But that's the extent of what's going on there. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. My party has 8 people and 3 or 4 have water breathing. Exactly. They're not going to worry about look. They won't like the ship sinking, but that's what happens. Ships sink with Krakens, as they should. Yeah, as it should. It should sink. Bang, bang, bang. Now let's keep going. Piercing damage. So we've got piercing. If the target is large or small, or is a large or small creature grappled by the Kraken. Why has it got large or small? Large, medium, or small creature grappled by the Kraken. That creature is swallowed. Okay. So we bite it, we do damage. If the target is large, medium, or small, the creature grappled by the Kraken creature grappled by the Kraken. That creature is swallowed and the grapple ends. Okay, so in other words, the bite is really if you got the tentacle first. If I made is it clear? So we know what the bite does. If the target is large, medium, or small, smaller creature, or smaller. Oh, that's why you got no medium or smaller creature. Large or smaller creature grappled by the Kraken, swallowed, and the grapple ends. While swallowed, the creature is blind and restrained and has total cover against attacks and other effects inside the Kraken, and it takes, this isn't enough damage. At the start of each of the Kraken's turns. At the start of each of the Kraken's turns. So this is coming back round. We really want to be doing ongoing damage. So this is where I think this needs to be changed again. And I need to use which dice mechanic? 10 12s. 10 12s acid damage. I can't count the number of times people have gotten out of this Kraken when I've swallowed them. And it takes, now 10 12s is 65 as well, isn't it? So there. This isn't going to happen until the start of the person's next turn, and we really want to have ongoing damage. So it's blind and has total cover against the attacks and the effects. It takes at the start of each of the Kraken's turns. Cool, that's fine. If the Kraken takes 50 damage or more on a single turn or blow, turn from a creature inside it, the Kraken must succeed on a DC. Now the DC was really high so that the Kraken would fail it most of the time. I don't want it to fail it. I want them in there. The whole point of swallowing them is to have a choo-choo and have them stuck. So saving throw at the end of each of that. Okay, saving throw at the end of that turn, or regurgitate all the swallowed creatures, which fall prone in a space within 5 feet of the Kraken. Fine. Okay, got that. If the Kraken dies, a swallowed creature is no longer restrained by it and can escape from the corpse using 15 feet of movement, exiting prone. Done. Okay, I think that has really finished up our Kraken. And I'll leave the space there, that's fine. So that is, I think that's everything. I've probably run the Kraken 8, 9, 10 times, quite a few times, people. So August, 6th of August, dated. Okay, so have I got enough going on here? I think I've got everything covered and what I wanted. I've boosted my damage on this little sucker, so it's doing more. All right, let's have a look at chat very quickly before I go over the changes. I know a few of you will be looking at this and thinking this is way too much. Honestly, it won't be. It won't be. I suspect that the players will still defeat the thing even when they're not level 20 and pretty easily. I know that seems unlikely, but seriously, level 20 characters, I threw gods, multiple gods at the level 20 characters and they still won. And there was only 3 of them. I thought 3 of them would be a problem, but no, apparently not. So here we go. What do we got here? Sanding down the PC with barnacles. Exactly. I approve of Keel Hall. Okay, all right. On my Kraken, I've added a Keel Hall attack if grappled by a tentacle. Oh, that's interesting. I wanted a pound attack. Whack the grappled creature against a hull without throwing its tool away. Oh dear. Yeah, I would say two and a half rounds and the Kraken is dead. So it's got that long to try to destroy the ship and wipe out the party of characters, which it will probably struggle to do still, in any case. Anyway, I need to have a drink of water and I will go through this. let's have a look and see what we have here in terms of the poll. Big Kid, I will try to put this up onto Patreon at the end of the week, probably on the Saturday for me in New Zealand, which is Friday in North America. Do you think the Kraken from the Dungeons & Dragons 5e Monster Manual needs fixing? Yes, 69%. Just watching, 20%. Undecided, 10%. No. So we've had a good flog at it, and let's go through the stat block and sort of highlight all of the different changes that have taken place. And I'm trying really hard to get better at sort of reviewing stuff with this, but hopefully it will be clear. Hopefully it will be clear. Anyway, I think we've got it right. So bring this back over so you can see, and yeah. So we needed to do something with the Kraken for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. So the Monster Manual didn't really do a very good job. I've used this multiple times. This is what I would suggest. Try this out, and I will put it up on the Patreon. Okay? The Kraken, instead of having just 18 armor classes, now 20. You could go higher, but I don't think that's the biggest issue. The hit points, I recommend using 729 hit points, because that is the maximum for this monster, rather than the average, which is 472. 472, it will last about 1.5 to 2 rounds if you're lucky. I didn't change its speed. I did not change the ability scores or the modifiers. I did do something with the saving throws. I've added charisma, and I've given it proficiency with it, so it's better at it. I've given it skills, so athletics is a plus 17, history is a plus 13, intimidation plus 12, perception a plus 11. I've added cold damage to this creature, so cold damage immunity is there, okay? Cold damage immunity is now a thing. I've included condition immunities. 1, it already had some, but not just paralyzed and frightened. Now we have grappled, prone, restrained, and stunned. Okay? Instead of just leaving it with true sight at 120 feet, it's also got blind sight at 120 feet. The proficiency bonus or passive perception is obviously quite high, because I've changed the score for perception. So it's not a 14, it's a decent 21 now, okay? 10 plus the perception bonus. And then with languages, I've given it had Abyssal, Celestial, I've given it Common as well. It's got Infernal and Primordial. I've made the telepathy 120 feet and nice and simple. Forget about the and it can't speak thing. I didn't worry about that. I didn't change the challenge rating. I know I've boosted certain things here. You don't need to change the challenge rating, because a lot of these things really will not have a significant effect on the mathematics of your game. Okay? Remember, your players have lots of special abilities as well. So I've left that alone. The proficiency bonus is fine where it is. It did not have legendary resistance. I've given it that once per round. I haven't given it 3 or 4 or 5. It's just once per round. Okay, amphibious, didn't change it. I've changed the freedom of movement thing. Freedom of movement was kind of silly. It now has colossal movement. It ignores magical and non-magical difficult terrain while in water. Now, because it's a Kraken, it also can't be moved against its will. You're not going to just move it around easy peasies. Forget it. It's still a siege monster, didn't change that. Multi-attack works a little bit differently. It can now make 3 attacks, either with the tentacle or the fling attack. One of those 3 attacks can be a bite attack if you like. Okay? You're probably not going to use your multi-attack that much, but it'll probably be the first thing you lead off on your turn. Well, actually, it's probably it would probably, you're going to use these, you will probably use multi-attack, because that's really the only thing I've given you now. Okay, the bite. It's not a plus 17, it's now a plus 15. It's more in line with what the characters would have at level 20 or beyond. The damage output is significantly higher. Okay, I did not muck around. I pushed it up to a 65 average, which is 10d10 plus 10. Okay, and I've also ensured that if you're inside the stomach and taking acid damage, it's going to be nice and big. It's 10d12, not the pathetic thing that we had before. So that's changed. But of course, you can't swallow the creature unless you have grappled the creature with a tentacle and shoved it in your mouth. If you're just biting something, that's it. It's just going to do 65 points of damage. You stay inside it, bad things will happen. I've changed the DC to a 20 for the Constitution saving throw to regurgitate. Okay, I didn't want to make it as hard. It was way too hard. It's a 25, really too hard for a monster of this scale. So no, not doing that. Yeah, the 50 points of damage. Yeah, that's fine. If it takes that much damage, it's going to potentially regurgitate. That's all good. Didn't change that. Tentacle. I pushed that from a 17 to a 15 down. Okay, more in line with characters of the right level. Damage output way up, gone to a 65. Okay, so that's 10d10 plus 10. Okay, 10-sided dice, 10 of those suckers, and add 10. And then the grapple to get out is a DC 20. It was way too low before. It was way too easy. And of course, you know, if you're grappled by the tentacle, you also restrained, and you've got 10 tentacles, so you can grab quite a few targets if you want, which you should be doing. Fling has had some major changes. So what I've done with the fling is you can throw in any direction you like. It's not random now. Okay, you've got control of where you fling, and you will be knocked prone too. When you strike a solid object or another creature, you take 65 points damage average. That's 10d12 bludgeoning. That's in line with the other damage things that you're doing, because we really need to push it way up, almost close to 200 points in one round. You're dealing with high-level characters. If the target is thrown at another creature, that creature must succeed on a DC 20 dexterity saving throw, or they take the same damage and they're knocked prone. So there's potential for being able to use whatever you grab, okay, with your tentacle attack later on to fling it at somebody else. Great, awesome. Legendary actions. Well, it only had 3 of these suckers. Now you get one at the end of every player's turn, as you should. I've given it standard actions that you can use. You can use dash, dodge, grapple. You can use help, search, shove, use an object. All of which, frankly, the only one I would worry too much about is the dodge one. Okay? Basic attack. All of the bite, the fling, and the tentacle attack are options as a legendary attack. Okay? Your legendary action can be used for any of those. Your electrical shock, which used to be the lightning storm. I've got rid of lightning storm and made it. It's still mechanically similar, but it's now part of the legendary action aspect, so you can move it around a little bit. Okay? You get to use your electric shock once per round, and it magically creates 3 bolts of lightning, and you've got to be within a range of 120 feet, just as before. The DC is 20 dexterity saving throw, okay, which is kind of toned down a little bit, and then the damage output is up to 65. 10d12 lightning damage on a failed save, and then half as much on a successful save. Okay, and you get to use that once per round as part of your legendary actions, and you've got a few. The ink cloud, once per round. Okay, rather than being 3 legendary actions, none of that nonsense, too hard to track. I don't like that sort of thing. This is easier to put into place. The range has not changed. How it operates hasn't really changed. The DC has changed to a DC 20 Constitution saving throw. The damage output, this should include the entire party. A party of about 4-5 characters. So the damage output that I've put in is up from what it originally was, but I have kind of toned it down to what I was doing with the other ones in comparison. 45 average, 7d12 poison damage, and you have the poison condition on a failed save. Half as much damage on a successful one. Okay? And of course, the rest of it hasn't changed. Now the Kraken lair things, I didn't really fluff around them with too much. Look, I wouldn't mess with them too much. I made the DCs a 20 for strength saving throw. That's really the only change. DC 20 for Constitution. All the rest is essentially exactly the same. I didn't think it needed to have anything more than that. That should pretty much cover you with what you need to do with your Kraken to actually make it dangerous for your players to face, and they really should be level 20 if they're facing this. If they're lower than that, they're probably going to die. We hope. Otherwise, I didn't make it hard enough. But yeah, I'll put it up into Patreon. Oh, that was a lot of work. That took a lot longer too than I was expecting. But that is how these things work. This is a big monster. It's got a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to consider. So that's probably part of the reason why it took me so long. And I'm losing my voice, which is not good. But let's have a look at chat very quickly before I have to go. For those of you who are wondering what is next, I'm going to come back next week and do another monster, right? What would that monster actually be? I haven't really decided yet. My general feeling is I'm going to try to rebuild all of the big, booty, powerful monsters that are really sort of centerpieces, you know, the things that when you apply to your game, you're expecting it to be like the climax of your campaign. That's why we've done, an ancient dragon, or an adult red dragon, or an ancient, I think it was an adult red dragon. That's why we did a lich, the aboleth. I believe the dragon turtle will definitely be on the cards in the future, but it's not the only one. I'm certainly open to people giving me suggestions, but if it's not part of the SRD, I don't want to touch it. I think the next one we'll do will be the Mummy Lord. The reason I feel like the Mummy Lord is necessary is because the Mummy Lord always seems to get burnt to pieces by fire. Every time I've used it, every single time it dies by fire. The Baylor is on the list, and as I said, the dragon turtle is probably coming in the future. So probably the mummy next week. And yeah, I'm going to keep working my way through all of these until we get them all done. If it gets around of bashing the hull before the PCs can respond, it can sink it. Good. Good, as it should. We want that to happen. Okay? It's not the end of the world. If you're level 20, you'll be able to figure out how to steal. Like, they've got spells that they can actually dimension door or teleport or use gate at that point. They got spells that can get them out of the sea. It's not going to be an issue, so I wouldn't worry about it. Ship goes down, they have to go get a new ship, and they're going to have bucket loads of money. They'll be able to afford it. Anyway, look, wherever you are in the world, should I say, sorry, thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Thank you for taking part in the poll. Thank you for your feedback, Big Kid and Fred Hoover and Cal Rel. And anybody else I might have missed in chat that... Oh, that's right. Wizards and Warp Drives was here. Also a patron. Thank you for your input. And look, I'll put this up onto Patreon. I want to thank all of my patrons because really, without you, this just doesn't work. I'm going to continue making and redoing the monster stat blocks for D&D 5e. And we'll see how far we get with this before the release of the new book. So, look, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Oh my God, my voice is gone.